for the last few days, over 90 hours, one of the most vibrant, educated, sophisticated countries in that entire region has been under the largest digital prison, I'm calling it. And people, as a result, have been suffering tremendously. As you said, phone lines are now slowly opening up. But what that means is that people in Iran are now able to call out. People from the outside cannot call in. And by the way, speaking to folks and sources, they're telling me that this is another way for the government to make money. And the internet still remains shut down under this massive digital prison. So communication is extremely hard. But I managed to speak with some folks who reiterated the tragic human toll that the reports mentioned. A source of mine yesterday told me that her cousin was shot with a rubber bullet. And today, when I spoke with her, she said that a friend of her cousin was also shot with a rubber bullet, and both women have lost their eyes. So these are stories that will only continue to come and underscore the really tragedy and the human toll of the past few days. And as we wait to see what Donald Trump does next, the question remains, how would all of this affect ordinary Iranian people in Iran?
Talk about ordinary Iranian people in the country. This all began when shopkeepers went out onto the streets decrying the economic situation in the country, inflation running at somewhere around 50%, the rial at its lowest rate against the dollar in its history. What does that mean when the driver is economic for these protests? Because this is a different cause for these protests than we've seen in recent years. 2022, 23, it was following the death of Masa Amini. 2009, 2010, it was the opposition parties protesting against Mohammad Ahmadinejad. This is different, though, because the cost of living affects, well, everybody.
Absolutely. And I would say over 50% of Iran's 90 million population here live under the poverty line. As I mentioned earlier, this is an extremely educated population. You have taxi drivers with PhD degrees, doctors, and the corruption that has ensued as a result is numbing. Just to put things in perspective for your viewers, we saw in the report family members are now going to the hospital, retrieving bodies of their loved ones who have been killed. And that in and itself is extremely emotional and exhausting. And there are reports coming in, and this has been confirmed by a few of my sources, that hospitals are now demanding an equivalent of 700 million toman. Garrett, at a time that the monthly salary in Iran is 13 million toman. And that doesn't encapsulate just the tragedy of the human death toll, but also the economic crisis that everyday people are facing. And you mentioned the previous protests. I will say, while social and political change has been at the forefront of previous protests, but the dismal economy and the country's really continuous free-falling economy has also been a concern, but it hasn't been as bad as we've seen before. And so much of that has to do with the domestic corruption and also, unfortunately, international sanctions.
Talk to me about what the international community is doing and can do. Donald Trump threatening that 25% tariff on Iran's trading partners. That would include China, India, Pakistan, for example, the UAE as well. What pressure can the international community, the EU also talking about sanctions, exert on the authorities in Tehran to try and bring about change?
Absolutely. We're hearing, by the way, earlier from the UN human rights chief who condemned the violent crackdown on protesters. As you mentioned, some of Iran's biggest trading partners, China, with over 32 billion in trade, by the way, yearly, and then India, Turkey, Germany, and the UAE as well, you mentioned. Note that these are countries that do trade with the United States, Garrett. So what does that mean between the United States and the relations that it has with these countries. And the 25% tariff, this was announced last night. Washington is just waking up. I think we really have to wait and see because, as we have seen before, tariffs have been used by Donald Trump and his administration as a threat. My question is whether or not these tariffs are going to be symbolic. What is going to be the international reaction to this? But then again, what impact is this going to have on the daily lives of people in Iran, the shopkeepers, ordinary people that you and I are talking about? Also, the last point I would make on this is that the almost 80% oil export that Iran has to China is oftentimes done through illicit channels and a black market. And again, knowing Iran and have been reporting on this, sanctions have been one of the reasons that the regime has gained so much ground economically in Iran and has managed to create this mafia economy that it controls, that has contributed to the demise of the country's economy and the crisis that the people are facing right now.
Journalist and author Tara Kangarlou, good to have you with us. Appreciate your time. Thank you.